Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and excited on this Monday. Victory Mondays are always the best, Schlegs. Ohio State with a nice big victory over Penn State. And with that, I'd like to welcome in the Ohio State Athletic Director, Mr. Ross Bjork. It's celebrating a nice big win on Saturday. And Ross, just kind of curious throughout the season, there's been so many of these coaching firings. Now it's like every Sunday night, it seems like another one's coming down. You spend a lot of times in the SEC where this obviously is occurring, but what is kind of your process throughout the season of how you kind of interact with Ryan? You've got a lot going on. He's got a lot going on in more of a micro sense with the team. How do you guys communicate through that? Is it regular? Is it routine? And kind of what do you get into?
I think it's a great question, and you're right. I mean, it's a crazy landscape going on right now, and the patience is really just not there. I mean, to be able to kind of build a program, right? It used to be, hey, you got to give this coach 4 years to get their recruiting class in, and cycle out maybe a different offensive scheme than what they brought in, and so there's just a lot of moving parts right now in this environment. And so what I like to do is, to me, there's the formal communication and there's the informal. And I think a lot of times the informal stuff is just as important. So during the season, what I like to do is, if you kind of take, sometimes I'll go up there on Sunday and I'll stop by the practice, and it's just a couple fist bumps. It's just being visible. It's checking in on maybe somebody got hurt the day before, so you're kind of checking in on that. And then Monday's a day off for the program, and so the coaches are grinding on the game plan, and so I'm staying away unless there's something that comes up. Tuesday is the press conference day. I like to be there. I like to be visible, be supportive. I may pop into coach's office a few minutes before, a few minutes after. There might be some message points that something came up, and he and I need to be on the same page. And then that gives me a chance to interact with the media, because we have to keep those relationships as well. And then I like to at least go out to practice at least one day during the week. Sometimes I can do it on Tuesday. Sometimes it may not happen till Thursday. But I like to at least, and some of that's superstition, just for me to be able to go out there and, spend time on the practice field. But there's always a guest. There's always somebody that's going to be out there that maybe I need. Maybe it's a donor. Maybe it's a former player. I know, Bobby, I saw you out there, last week, and I had met C. Grant before, and I was like, wow, this guy's a legend. First time meeting him, right? So that was cool. And then Coach Day and I, we have a standing meeting on Friday mornings that we make sure that that's where he and I can hit some high level things. We can talk about, things happening in the program. We can talk about national things, but that's a standing meeting on Friday. And then, of course, on game day, there's going to be all kinds of varying interaction, before the game, after the game. So that's what I like to do throughout the football season.
Well, I'm going to ask you this, because this is one thing I struggle with in this state, like everybody getting fired in the portal. And it is, you can contact anybody. In the NFL, like, you can't contact current coaches while they're in the midst of the season, which the ultimate goal is to roster management and get through your season and win a championship. And so now you have these firings, you have people discussing while in the midst of trying to make a run. How do you see this playing out in the future, Ross? Like, do you feel that we're going to start to go toward the NFL model, or do you think that college football is just such a unique case in and of itself that this is what we got?
Yeah. Yeah, Anthony, you open up a great question, and we probably don't have enough time. We could probably do 700 podcasts talking about this, right? Because there's so many moving parts, and I think it really just speaks to the big picture of where we are right now in all of college athletics, but in particular college football, because that receives the bulk of the attention, and that's the financial vehicle for all of us. Is we really need clarity. We need clarity on what is the model. What are the true ground rules? How do we enforce those ground rules? How do we have the right kind of structure around player movement? We will never get back the era where we could restrict player movement. Players had to sit out a year in order to get their academics straight, right? And we used to be able to have a list of schools to say, okay, Anthony, we know you want to transfer from Ohio State, but you cannot go to these 15 schools. We had the ability to do that in the past. So that era is gone, and rightfully so, right? But how do we make sure that there are parameters on the tampering piece? because we know contact is happening. We know we have agents in the environment now where you don't have to contact the player or even the parents because they have an agent, and the agent might be proactively shopping, their client to other programs. And so to me, the clarity piece. So how can we have agreements with athletes that define, they're not employees, but how do we define that player contact, that player movement? How do we define the revenue share? And again, we're just talking football, the revenue share payments that the institution is paying, and that could be tied to player movement. So I do think we have some pieces of structure right now where we have a memo of understanding between an athlete and the institution. Now we can define transfer movement. We can define how they get paid. So we have at least a little bit of that. So that kind of mimics an NFL structure. But again, they're not employees. They're still students. There's still academic requirements. There's still the recruiting element that, no other, organization, the NFL doesn't recruit, right? It's a draft, right? And then it's free agency that's well defined. So we still need some pieces of that, but that's the part that might be the most frustrating for our coaches and even the athletes. The athletes want clarity, right? They need clarity. So we're getting there. We have a few pieces on the table. It's still a little bumpy. Where it's going to go in the next 10 years, no one can predict that. But I do know that some of these pieces have to come together where it's just a little more defined and a little tighter in terms of what the structure is.
So since you brought up, that revenue share, and then there's the traditional NIL, name, image, and likeness, and Ohio State has developed the third-party arm in conjunction with Learfield. How has all that been operating? I know that there's probably goals that people have and how they envision it working. Has that been as smooth and is it worked as efficiently as you had hoped?
Yeah, it really has. And again, it's early in the process. I mean, a lot of this is sort of startup operations, so we're still building a lot of these elements out. But every time our Learfield organization, it's called Ohio State Sports Properties, every time they sit down and talk to a sponsor, you have your primary sponsorship package, and then we will always build in an NIL component. And some sponsors will say, hey, we're not going to do that. Most of our sponsors here are diving into that. So there's going to be an NIL component in every sponsorship deal moving forward. And then it also allows us to go out and get, maybe somebody doesn't want a primary sponsorship agreement with Ohio State where they're on the video board, they're on the LED ribbon boards, they have a sign, and they only want to do athletes. That's great too. So now we have that component. So we have, based on all accounts, we have the biggest sort of system right now in the country. I got in trouble last year throwing out numbers. So we're not going to throw out numbers. But we know based on what we've submitted so far through the NIL clearinghouse system called NIL Go, which is College Sports Commission based, we know that we have a very robust program. Our athletes are thriving in it. The other thing about it too, Bobby, it allows us to promote all of our sports. Yeah. Obviously, again, football is going to lead the way. Men's and women's basketball are going to have high profile, but we have a lot of other athletes that have really good agreements with companies. May not get all the attention as everyone else, but it allows us to really promote our entire athletic program. So we feel really good about the system. It's continuing to build out the staffing. We're hiring, more staff members as well. The NIL Go clearinghouse is getting more definition around it. Deals are being cleared faster. So that part, we're excited about it. We're excited about the future. And it's, again, we want to have really kind of a for certain market where we know, hey, we've got just about this amount of money in our third party NIL structure on top of the revenue share that allows us to just have a robust system. That's what it's going to take in this competitive landscape.
So you've been here, I mean, honestly, it seems like been here for a while, but it's actually a hot minute. Win a national championship. You have a lot of success in sports, other sports at Ohio State. For you right now, just thinking about it, like what is one of the things that you and even President Carter are talking to the board at Ohio State? You had football, you got two guys right now that are up for a Heisman, just coming off a national championship. You got the Buckeyes Sports Group. You have some game day experiences that you guys have been doing, which have been fantastic. How has that been in conversations as to, hey, athletics is the front porch to the university and everybody helping everybody, not siloed for the brand that is the Ohio State University. How has that interaction been for you while you've been here for just a little while, Ross?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Anthony. And, I'm glad you brought up President Carter and our board of trustees, because in this environment in particular, and again, it kind of goes back to what the first question was, right? The bumpiness around college athletics. If you don't have alignment from your board to your president to the AD to the football coach to really our entire athletic department with every coach, if you don't have alignment and there's not shared vision, it can get sideways pretty quick. And we've seen that across the country. And so the alignment piece is so critical on vision. So what we talk about, and we're very blessed that we have a president who really embraces athletics. He knows it's not the most important thing, but he also realizes it's the most visible, right? And with that comes a responsibility. So we're part of the university strategic plan, Education for Citizenship 2035. It's a 10-year roadmap. We're one of the 6 pillars. Athletic excellence is one of the 6 pillars. And then underneath that, there's really 2 tenets: best in class, student athlete /fan /customer experience. So best in class, and then leader in the evolving landscape of college athletics. We're going to anchor to those 2 points: best in class, and how do we have a leadership position. Doesn't mean we're always going to win every argument. It doesn't mean we're always going to cast the final vote, but Ohio State should be in a leadership role. It should be part of the national conversation, and then we should be best in class. And if you're best in class, that means you're winning championships. That means you're building buildings. You're funding the program at the right level. You're doing all the technical things that go with that. And then what I've really discovered here, guys, is that there really is no ceiling. We could probably wake up every day and just continue to do the same things we're doing, and we're going to have a great athletic department. We'll win championships. We'll have Heisman Trophy winners. We're unveiling a Jerry Lucas statue, one of the best basketball players of all time, right? We'll have those moments. However, if we lead and engage at a higher level, then people are going to look up and say, "Oh my God, I thought Ohio State was great before, but I can't believe they just did this." Whatever that might be. It might be building a new building. It might be, the Ohio Stadium has all these massive renovations over the next 5 to 7 years, which need to happen. It might be building a new ice hockey arena, which we're working on. Renovating the Woody Hayes Athletic Complex. Those are all the things that are next. But that's how I look at it, is the power of the brand, the power of the breadth of Ohio State, the fandom, right? Everybody's a Buckeye in this state. If you touch the state of Ohio in your lifetime, you're a Buckeye fan for life. So those are the kind of things that we need to capitalize on. So that's what gets me excited about talking to President Carter, our board, what the vision is, how we map this out, and how we engage at a high level. So, but I'm still the new guy, Anthony. I'm still learning. We'll carry that as long as they let me. But it's been really exciting to see the power and the potential still of this place.
It's tremendous. We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk a little about those in-game experiences, the future of Ohio State, the Big Ten leading the way, all coming up next in the Bobby Carpenter Show. Here with Athletic Director Wolf Endowed, Ross Bjork here talking about this. And people were blown away, Ross, and I wasn't expecting it. I don't know how you guys kept it a secret. Brutus zip lining in, the parachutes and everything. And you mentioned Ohio State trying to be a leader in things, renovating the stadium, some of the new stuff that's going on, but also trying to maintain the tradition. There's a certain way things are done. And I think largely a lot of the in-game stuff has been overwhelmingly accepted and excited as far as the bell ringing and everything like that. How have you gauged that? Are there still more things you have in the bag? And how have you kind of just tried to strategically plan some of these new experiences for a game to make it feel familiar, but also exciting?
Yeah, well, first of all, just a credit goes to our staff. I mean, Caleb Clark, he's our associate AD for marketing and live events. He's done a tremendous job. He's led the charge. We basically gave him kind of a blank template, if you will, but anchoring to that tradition evolved, mentality, and just said, hey, look, the slate is clean to say, what can we do? And again, the goals were very simple: home field advantage and home court advantage. You're going to see things in basketball too, that will be new, home field advantage, and then people walking away saying, man, I had fun and I made an impact on the game. And look, in the second half, like we needed the crowd on Saturday. Just use that as an example. So it feels like that piece of it, the no dead space in the game script, high energy all the time, impactful music all the time, presentations now taking place in the north end zone on the Buckeye leaf, where we got a crystal football. We're miking the band up, right? We're doing those sort of things. Brutus has a different entrance every game. I think people now want the zip line every game. Not sure we can pull that off every game, but that was epic, right? That was just a really cool moment. The victory bell, the victory bell should be not just after the game. That's a symbol that can mean a lot of things, and so we wanted the bell to be rung. The victors are entering the field of play, and then we're going to ring it afterwards. It also allows us to honor, legacy people here at Ohio State. I mean, we've had Clark Kellogg and Michael Redd, right? So we're able to mix in other sports. Obviously, Urban, did it, on Saturday. Coach Cooper, that was really cool. And of course, the legend Archie Griffin, right? So those allow us to kind of bring in some other traditional elements. So we'll judge it. We have surveys that we do really after every game. We'll do another end of season survey. We'll want to know what worked, what didn't work. Look, we talked about hang on Sloopy and that we were going to maybe move it around throughout the game and make it a better, maybe a feel type when we would play it. We've kept that between the third and fourth quarter. Now, I do believe we need to bring more energy when we do that song. But those are things that we kind of learned after the first game, so we're going to always learn. We're going to always evaluate, always assess. We'll get feedback from the fans. But I think if you just look at our atmospheres, no matter if it's Grambling or Texas or Penn State, people are having more fun and it's more engaging. So we'll use that energy to keep evaluating.
Yeah, I absolutely love the victory bell because, like you said, it means multiple things. And it's like the victory of a outstanding career, Urban getting inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, right? Kind of before, after. I love that element. Well, let's talk a little bit about, because there is a thing about like we're carrying Fox, and it's always the big noon, right? And you talked about the leadership aspect of Ohio State in and amongst the Big Ten and college football. What does that look like down the road for the TV deals and the rights as you think about this, not just for football, but for all sports and how that works at Ohio State?
Yeah, there's no question. Look, Ohio State, again, the brand, the TV viewership, I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. We totally understand it. We take that with a great amount of responsibility. I think there's a lot of respect around the Big Ten presidents and chancellors table, the athletic director table, where there's a recognition, and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is. The numbers speak for themselves. So we get why Fox wants us at big noon. That's their anchor broadcast. So again, you have to embrace that piece of it and accept that. But at the same time, looking for more balance. That's what I've talked about. Do we have to be on big noon Saturday for 6 games in one season? Probably not. This year, it's a lot more balanced out. So that's really what we're seeking, while understanding that we can be, the flag bearer for the conference. In the future, here's what we have to pay attention to. So Fox has our TV rights until 2036, and all of this is well documented. So no inside baseball here, but 2036 for Fox. But the sub-license agreements for CBS and NBC, which Fox, controls, come up in 2030. So we have a window here to really understand the landscape, to understand value, to understand what platforms are emerging in the live sports. I mean, you're seeing Apple TV emerge, you're seeing Netflix emerge, you're seeing Amazon Prime emerge in terms of live sporting. So what do the platforms look like? Linear TV, I'm a YouTube TV subscriber. It was disruptive Saturday night trying to figure out, where am I going to watch, right? And so you have to pay attention to all of those things. The good thing is, Commissioner Petiti is well-versed in the TV landscape. He led it on the TV side with CBS and ABC, Major League Baseball side, obviously leading it on the Big Ten side. So I think, just having inside knowledge to what's happening, having insight, understanding the landscape as we go through this discussion around, the Big Ten enterprise discussion, TV's at the forefront. Can't get into a lot of details on the the financial pieces of that, but just understanding that the Big Ten should lead the way in commercial activity. That's why we're having these conversations, I think is really, really important. And Ohio State will have a seat at the table, throughout and making sure that we always do, what's best for us while understanding, the Big Ten is at the forefront. So a lot to it, Anthony, a lot to come over the next 4 to 6 years as really things evolve. And then to get into the 2030 era, which is really not that far away when we think about it. It'll come at us fast, but it's going to be an exciting time, I think, across the entire, spectrum of the Big Ten.
So as you mentioned those TV deals, that's where a lot of the media rights, the value is derived with these universities and the athletic departments. The private equity piece came up, and right before the season, obviously kind of dies down as we get in the thick of the playoff race, and everybody's excited about that. But timelines for that stuff moving forward, how does that look? Is there an impact there for the average fan? What does it do for athletic departments?
Yeah, the main conversation is kind of what I alluded to earlier, is we do believe that the Big Ten has an undervalued sort of commercial landscape in terms of primary sponsors through the Big Ten Conference, in terms of postseason, capitalizing on postseason competition and hospitality and all the things that go into just raising the bar from a revenue standpoint. And that revenue, if there's more revenue produced, that goes back to benefit, the member institutions. And then you look at the TV landscape coming. So that's the main premise around, the term Big Ten enterprise. The equity piece, the capital piece, very fluid. That conversation is still ongoing. Ohio State has not made any decisions. I think that's very clear that there's still a lot of pieces to analyze. Other programs, have been more public about their positioning. We have that conversation at the president level, the board of trustee level, to make sure that we're all in sync there. So fluid process, fluid conversation, but it's going to be an ongoing, analysis. It should not affect the everyday fan. It really shouldn't. But our job is to make sure that this is funded, and it's funded at the highest level. We have 36 sports. Football leads the way. We have to make sure football has those resources. So trying to be creative in this new landscape is really kind of what that whole process has been about.
All right, Ross, we really appreciate the time. One last one before we get you out of here. We talked about your meetings with Ryan. So we're looking at all the jobs that are open: LSU, Penn State, Arkansas, Auburn coming up, Florida, UCLA, Virginia Tech. I mean, and there'll be more as we look forward. And there's been guys who have re-signed their deals with Matt Rule, Kurt Cignetti, which is probably good for keeping the Big Ten strong and those guys maintaining at their schools. How do you keep Ryan Day happy? What is the process of that, of making sure that there's no allure from there or the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, that's, that goes back to the relationship piece, and that's the constant dialogue, the constant interaction, the constant just relationship building, understanding, where, one, how are we supporting the program here at Ohio State? And again, never letting off the gas pedal in terms of supporting football at the highest level, making sure that, when there is staff turnover, we can hire the right folks like a Matt Patricia, right? And making sure that then we keep the guys that we want to keep, right, and have that continuity. Obviously, the NIL landscape plays into it from a roster building, retention, transfer portal, incoming class piece. It's just a constant dialogue. At the end of the day, I know Coach Day and his family, they love being Buckeyes. They've been here a long, long time now in this world. And so we want to keep that. Again, back to the stability around college football. Nothing beats continuity, especially when it's elite. And we have elite continuity with Coach Day at the helm. So we need to keep that as long as possible. We can never take that for granted. I hope what people are seeing with the turmoil around the country is that continuity with Coach Day is elite, and we got the right guy. So it's going to be, just fluid. But our job, again, we extended his contract last year. Let's finish strong like we know we're capable of this year. Let's have a great end of the regular season, go into the postseason, and just make sure we have all the resources that we need to have to compete at the highest level.
Thank you for your time, Ross. We appreciate it. It's one of the few places where within a calendar year, they could tell you to fire the guy and then make sure he doesn't leave all at the same time.
There you go. Let's finish strong, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Ross. Get out of
Appreciate
here.
it, Ross.
Wolf Endowed Athletic Director Ross Bjork doing a great job for us there, giving us a little insight, Schlegs, into what's going on at the athletic landscape there at Ohio State. And we kept him for way too long. So really appreciate that.